Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Nice to have you here again, Governor Cooper. We had a similar conversation a few weeks ago.
Yep.
Where I tortured him with going through the entire timeline of the events of Biden dropping out. I'm not going to do that again. But
that's yesterday's news anyway, right, Ryan?
Well, it's still pretty important history.
Right.
And now, while we're talking about it, let's talk about it quickly. Have you talked to the president since then?
I have not.
You have not?
Okay.
Yeah. All right, let's start with another important question that has come up a lot in the last few weeks. Tell us about the flurry of activity around you being the Tim Walz of this week, and why it didn't happen. Why you took yourself out of contention.
Well, look, that's also yesterday's news. But
yeah, but people are interested. Not everyone knows. Yeah.
But I just knew Tim Walz was out there. I am so excited about Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. I've known Tim for a while now. He served as chair of the DGA this past year. I served as 2022 when he ran. He is a smart, dedicated leader, straightforward guy. Everybody likes to be around him. I think he's really ignited a lot of interest just himself, but that team, to see them together, to see them having fun,
yeah,
that's really exciting right now. And I think this is the perfect team to take on Donald Trump and J.D. Vance.
All right, let's talk a little policy and a little politics. What do you want to start with first?
Whatever you want.
All right, let's start with North Carolina politics.
All right. I figured you'd go there.
Yeah, you know, this audience likes that a little bit.
Yeah.
We were talking backstage about some of the down ballot races in North Carolina that are going to make things interesting in the fall for the top of the ticket. I don't think everyone knows that local dynamic, and I want to talk generally about North Carolina and Harris Walz's chances there. I know you're very bullish on that. But tell us what's going on the ground with this undercard situation and how it might affect the race.
It's hard not to talk about it together, because people are very excited about Kamala Harris. And I believe there's going to be a top-down effect on the other important races that are going on right now. We have the most important governor's race in the country. My term will be ending at the end this year.
Why is it the most important?
Well, it's the biggest state, and it's a swing state. And DGA will tell you that this is their most important race. RGA will tell you the same thing. We're a fast-growing state. We're the 9th, 8th largest state now. We'll probably be the 7th largest state in 2030. A lot going on in North Carolina. But when you look at that race, along with down-ballot races and the importance of breaking the legislative supermajority, there's a lot going on at the statewide level. And we have the most extreme right-wing Republican nominees. I'll compare our list to anybody in the state. Mark Robinson, running for governor, who says that men should lead, not women, that women aren't responsible enough to keep their skirts down, and that's why they have abortions, called LGBTQ community filth. Things that he has said have been so awful. You also have an attorney general's race. We have Jeff Jackson, the Democratic nominee. Dan Bishop is part of the Marjorie Taylor Greene cabal in Congress, who's been such an obstructionist. He's also the author of the infamous bathroom bill in North Carolina when he was a state legislator, and of course is an election denier. And then the race has caught a lot of people's attention, because it usually doesn't catch people's attention, but we elect the head of our public schools,
right,
the superintendent of public instruction, and we have a right-wing conspiracy theorist who has been nominated by the Republicans. She homeschools all of her children, took them to the January 6th rally, the day that the Capitol was stormed. She has advocated for parents to take their children out of public schools, believes they are social and socialist indoctrination centers, has called for the public execution of Barack Obama and Joe Biden. Yours truly believes teachers should have guns in the classroom. You know, you can't do public education well if you don't believe in public education, and clearly she doesn't. So these races, I think, are going to generate a lot of interest in and of themselves. I think there's going to be a rising up that will end up helping Vice President Harris in this race from some people who may not have gone to the polls even in a presidential year, because these races are so important and so specific. Particularly parents groups are banding together over the school issue. So there will be a lot going on in North Carolina, which of course was the Biden-Harris closest loss in 2020, only 1.3%. Polls are looking better, third fastest growing state. A lot of new technology, life sciences, people moving into North Carolina. Very exciting time for Democrats now.
All right, let's talk about the coalition that Harris needs to build in North Carolina. What does it look like, and how is it different as we switched candidates here from Biden to Harris? I think one of the most important demographics that she can hit is young people. I believe that if she can... Biden was struggling with young people in North Carolina?
Yeah, well, I think across the country, I've talked to so many committed young people who care deeply about climate change, who want to fight discrimination, want reasonable efforts to make sure that we keep people safe from gun violence, who believe in public education, who want to fight for women's reproductive freedom, but oftentimes it doesn't translate into actually voting because maybe they're transient. Do I register at college? Do I register at home? What's going on right now is a concerted effort by young people to make them recognize, to translate all this passion on these issues to the ballot box, because there's never been a more stark choice than they have right now. So I think that is going to be important for her. She needs to make sure that we turn out the strong urban vote in blue counties that we have right now. I think she is really speaking to people with her economic plan. I know we're going to talk policy in a minute, but I think that she appeal to urban and rural voters with understanding that even though we have low unemployment and a high stock market and record job growth and inflation cooling, that a lot of everyday people are struggling with paying for groceries, with child care, and feel like the more they work, the further behind they get. She is speaking to those people right now with the plans that she wants to put in place. So I think that that's going to matter significantly as well in this race. North Carolina is one of those purple states that is always right there. I have a 2008 feeling about North Carolina, and we know what that means because that's the last time North Carolina voted for a Democratic presidential candidate in Barack Obama. We came very close in 2012. President Obama and I had a conversation about that.
They kind of gave up at the end. They couldn't.
That's right.
Remind people what happened.
Ohio, the state that's not first in flight.
David Plouffe, who's now advising the Harris campaign, he's talked about it as a wrenching decision at the end when they had to decide what to do with those resources.
President Obama believes he could have won. He could have won North Carolina, but for that. But in any event, we know
for
them making the decision to put more resources in Ohio versus North Carolina back then. Yeah. But I think that everything is coming together to turn North Carolina blue this time. A lot of excitement. I haven't felt this much excitement since that 2008 race.
You talked about young voters. There's some protesters not too far from here protesting the Biden administration's support for Netanyahu and generally the war in Gaza. How is that issue resonating with young voters in North Carolina? Is that something that Harris and Walz need to address forthrightly when they visit North Carolina, when they're talking to young voters? Or is it not as big a deal in your state?
It's a big deal.
You have big college campuses?
Well, the loss of life is tragic. We know that these terrorist attacks initiated by Hamas against peaceful communities, and then we've seen so many innocent lives lost in the response. I think that what's happening is Biden-Harris is working very hard toward a peace deal here. I think we have to keep working on that. Politically, I don't know how it's going to affect. I think it's important to note that you don't want somebody who cozies up to dictators like Donald Trump, making decisions about Iran, making decisions here that we know likely will not be in the best interest of our country.
The coalition in North Carolina, for years, Democrats talked about the Obama coalition, and that's what led in 2008 to North Carolina going Democratic in a presidential election. That coalition is different now in North Carolina, isn't it? And I wonder if you could explain some of the nuances of how it's changed. You know, what does that coalition look like versus the last time Democrats won?
I think that there are so many more unaffiliated voters now. I think there's a lot of frustration with partisan politics.
Yeah.
People want problem solvers. And if we can get this message out about the fact that the Biden-Harris administration worked with a broken Congress to make generational investments in infrastructure, lowering pharmaceutical prices, making some progress on the fight against gun violence, and they worked with Republicans as much as they could. I think that's what people are yearning for, and I think Vice President Harris can show that she has a track record doing that. And when you look at her experience in the U.S. Senate, and when you look at Tim Walz's experience in the U.S. House, I think they're going to go to work to try and pass some of this groundbreaking legislation, build on what's already been done, but she's also making her own way with positive economic ideas, I think, that are going to affect the middle class, help working families. I mean, she has spent her career looking out for working families. Donald Trump has spent his career trying to rip them off. And that's essentially what we need to make sure that people understand here, that it is a stark, important decision that they're going to be making here with this vote.
From your vantage point as governor, looking at North Carolina as the Democrats went from Biden to Harris, what did you see locally in terms of the change? And what was the magnitude of it?
So I think everybody appreciated the president's decision, his patriotism, his courage. I've said many times that he had a couple of things. He has so many amazing character traits. You know, one of them is always try to do the right thing, and then another thing is always try to fight through adversity. And 99+% of the time, they coincide. This time, I think he made the right decision that this time we don't need to fight through adversity to do the right thing. And I think people felt relief, and they felt a new spirit that we really had a chance to win this thing. And I'm so excited. I'm a sports guy.
That wasn't there?
I think that there was concern, particularly in North Carolina, that we might not be able to get over the hump. I continued to believe that as we got closer to the election, that things would crystallize and we could make this thing happen.
Yeah.
But I think we've made it easier now with Vice President Harris at the top of the ticket and trying to convince young people that, yeah, this is time to engage, trying to make sure that we have the ground forces that are necessary. And you see it in the volunteering for these campaigns right now. It's astounding. I think 90% of the 12,000 volunteers that we have for the campaign are first-time volunteers, which is extraordinary. And it tells me a lot about what is happening on the ground right now. The combination of knowing that a Donald Trump presidency again would be a disaster, and the excitement of, and she doesn't talk about it, but the first woman and first woman of color to be president of the United States with her background, people are feeling as if they're going to be a part of history, and they will be.
You said she doesn't talk about it. Is that noticeable to you that she doesn't talk about it? Is it important?
She doesn't need to. I mean, everybody knows.
Yeah.
And I think what people want to hear is what she is going to do, what she has done and what she is going to do. And I think she's doing a magnificent job of letting people know what kind of president she is going to be. And she's had a very short runway here to establish herself. Some reporter asked me the other day.
Some reporter, that sounds so dismissive.
Well, it was about why should you be putting out policy when you're so close to the election? Is that really realistic to do? And I said, absolutely, you've got to do that. You need to let people know in detail what it is that you want to do. You're just not some reporter.
No, I'm kidding. We're all
you're
just some reporters.
Here.
Let me ask you this. You famously are the governor with a lieutenant governor that are ideologically not aligned.
I'll say.
With presidents and vice presidents, it's usually a little bit closer than you and your lieutenant. But how much room do you think Kamala Harris has to chart her own course, policy-wise, politically, in this campaign, even at the risk of breaking with some of the things that are important to and that the president believes in?
She needs to be, and I think is, proud of the accomplishments of this administration. Truly extraordinarily generational. Those investments that are being made in infrastructure and making sure we're standing up to the drug companies and fighting climate change, moving us to renewable energy. Those are the things that are exciting, and she needs to take credit for that. But she's also her own person. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think President Biden would expect her to be her own person with her own set of ideas about where she wants to go. And I think she has done that at the beginning here with outlining this economic plan that she has in place.
Yeah, let's talk about that. One last question on North Carolina. Compared to Georgia, do you think Kamala Harris should be spending more time in North Carolina than Georgia?
Of course I do.
Well, you want her to win. You wouldn't say that.
You got to play home court. So when the vice president was coming down, I've met her every time that she's come into North Carolina. She'll yell halfway down the stairs, "How many this time, Roy?" 16. She has been to North Carolina as vice president 16 times as of Friday. So you can tell that North Carolina is a place that she wants to be. She wants to win the state. She knows that it is a bellwether, because if Kamala Harris wins North Carolina, she is president of the United States. And that is very much in the cards right now.
All right. Let's talk about some of the policies that she has laid out so far, starting with the corporate tax rate. She wants to hike that to 28%. Do you think that's enough? Too much?
So what you have in Donald Trump is somebody who is always looking out for the tax rates of corporations and the wealthy. I think what Kamala Harris is doing is trying to set her mission apart from that, to let people know that the tax breaks, the child care tax credits, those are the things that should go to everyday working people. The earned income tax credit, the other proposals that she has made should go to working people and not to the wealthiest among us and not to corporations. And I think that is the right message to send. Obviously, when you are working something like that through Congress, that's an uphill challenge, and it's one that I think they are ready to take on. The Biden-Harris administration did it. The Harris-Walz administration can do it. I think they've got the ability to get something like that through Congress.
What are the other policy priorities that you like that she has put forward so far? And do you think she's done enough on that front?
I think she's addressing people dealing with the cost of living right now. And that has, I think, overcome a number of families to the point where they're not paying a lot of attention to the macroeconomic trends. I was doing a recruiting trip in Western Europe, and they said, the United States is the strongest economy in the world. What are you upset about? But what everyday people are upset about is the fact that it's costing them more than they can make. So what she's trying to do with her proposals is to meet them where they are and to let them understand that we care about you. We understand that you're struggling with this. we're going to come forward with some innovative proposals that take on the cost of living. And I think she's begun that process successfully.
There's always a debate among Democrats about how populist to be when they talk about economics. As a very electorally very successful governor in North Carolina, where did you come down on that debate? The strategists always have.
Well, I think that Biden-Harris.
Do you consider yourself a populist?
I don't consider I don't like that kind of label, because I know that small businesses and business owners create jobs for everyday people. So you have to create an environment where they can create those jobs, and you can do that while still passing laws and encouraging efforts to keep consumers and everyday people from getting ripped off. And you can have a fair tax system where everything doesn't fall on the middle class. You continue to alleviate the tax burden. Like in North Carolina, we're fighting that battle right now. Our Republican legislature wants to get the corporate tax down to 0. I tell them we're the best state in the country for business. CEOs never ask me about the corporate tax rate in North Carolina. They always ask me about workforce. That's their issue. They want a well-educated, skilled, dedicated workforce. So I think that's the kind of governor that you need, that we're spending a lot of time on education, investing in early childhood and public schools, that we're spending a lot of time on making sure that our workforce is trained up with great community colleges. And I think that that's the kind of effort that she should make from a national level, is certainly one that's been successful for us. We need to do more for working families. I would like to do more. This General Assembly gives us a harder time on that.
Well, maybe this is a way to ask you about what would help her there. What's the most popular thing you've done as governor, and what was the most unpopular thing you did in hindsight?
So I think expanding Medicaid is the most important effort that we have made with a Republican legislature that still had a lot of leadership that considered it Obamacare, and it's the reason why there are still 10 mostly southern red states that haven't expanded Medicaid. And we did it because we got their constituents talking to Republican legislators. We put together bipartisan, non-traditional coalitions, tough on crime sheriffs who had a lot of people in jail, who were dealing with people in emergency rooms, knew that they needed health care, not handcuffs. Republican county commissioners who were seeing rural hospitals struggle and maybe their doors were beginning to close. Chambers of commerce who recognized that the providers, when they have to treat indigent people, often go to the private sector to recover the money, thus sending up the premiums. All of these people came together and told Republican legislators, you guys need to do this. And we were able to funnel that and channel it. And we've got now almost 530,000 more people who now benefit from Medicaid expansion. So we're excited about that.
So talking about Republicans, to the extent that there are any who want to still repeal Obamacare, is popular in North Carolina.
So I mean, people being able to have health insurance and to have the federal government assume a significant part of the premium is a great idea. And don't believe Donald Trump.
That wasn't the case in 2012.
Don't believe him backing off the Affordable Care Act. Do not believe him. This has been one of his primary goals, is to eliminate the Affordable Care Act. He almost did it one time. By one vote. He lost it by one vote. So we've got to remember that these guys don't like it. They will grab those health insurance cards right out of the hands of everyday people if you give them the chance. And I believe that health care will be an important issue on the ballot.
Or what's the most unpopular thing you ever did in North Carolina? What's the thing that
ever did?
Yeah, with the voting public. What's the one thing, if you were talking to Kamala Harris, you said,
look, I think it was the time that I wore my Duke jersey and got all over social media and heard a lot from my Tar Heel friends.
So if she's asked about that rivalry, what do you tell her? How do you advise her?
You got to go with the truth. You got to be yourself. I'm a Tar Heel. I don't know what she is on that.
Yeah.
I have not.
Wouldn't you tell her to stay out of it?
I don't know. It's too important. We're talking important issues. You know, if you're running for office, you got to take a stand.
It just seems like there's no percentage there.
You got to take a stand.
I'm sure you've looked at the numbers. Which has a larger constituency of voters?
Of course, your big public school does. Come on, man.
So isn't that what you would tell her?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
All right.
Yeah. I'll take her to a game. She will love it. You'll love it. Duke Carolina game.
Oh, Duke Carolina. Yeah.
Well,
that's going to put her in one of those
bucket list thing.
But that seems like one of those politician moments, like putting on a helmet or something, where it's going to be tough because she's going to be clapping at the and people are going to be pissed off.
Yeah, but she'll be president, so it'll be exciting.
There you go.
President Obama
good
went
point. It won't
to
be
a
any
Duke
games.
Carolina
That's right.
game. He had a great time. I think it was when Reggie Love was his guy
body
working
man.
with
Yeah.
him. That's exactly right. So
yeah. Joe Biden is going to speak tonight. And then he's not sticking around. First of all, what do you think he should say? What do you think he will say? What do you want to hear? What do you want to hear him say? What should the speech be about?
I want him to express his full faith and confidence in Kamala Harris, that she is the person and that this is her time to be president of the United States, and that everybody who was for him, everybody who's thinking about what they ought to do, need to be for her. I hope he will talk about some of the significant accomplishments of his administration, which have been extraordinary. You know, in North Carolina, for example, we were putting tens of millions of dollars into a great plan to connect households and businesses all over our state to high-speed internet.
Yeah.
Now we're able to put billions. Now we're able to actually get it done, which is extraordinary. He needs to be telling that story. We had forgotten communities who were struggling and needed clean water, and we were able to find the money to replace their water system and fix roads and provide child care stabilization at a really tough time when everyday workers needed child care. These are amazing accomplishments of the Biden-Harris administration. He ought to take credit for that. And, you know, I'd love to hear him talk about his decision. I thought his decision was a very patriotic one because he's the kind of guy who wants to win. He's the guy who saved this country and won in 2020 and saved us from Donald Trump. And we're forever grateful for that. But he knows that this is the right time and the right place for him to do this.
Do you think he should talk about why he stepped down as nominee?
I would like to hear that. I think I know why. I think it was the right thing to do. And even though he's a guy who gets back up when he gets knocked down and continues to do that, this was a time where he needed to do something else.
I think there's still a little bit of confusion about the why, because in his Oval Office address, he alluded to unity of the party, but he never conceded the arguments that were being made to him by a lot of senior Democrats, which were about, you can't win, or others who told him, even if you won, you couldn't serve for more years.
Yeah. Well, I think he still believed he could win.
Yeah.
But I think he understood that to bring the party together and to make sure that we won, this is the thing he needed to do. That's my opinion. He has not told me that. That's my opinion as to where he ended up.
But you'd like to hear more about that tonight,
Yeah, it would
about
be great.
the decision.
It would be great.
Do you think the bitterness and conflict in the Democratic Party that led, before Kamala Harris became the nominee, how much work is still required for that to dissipate, especially with respect to Biden's relationship with some top Democrats like Nancy Pelosi and Barack Obama?
I think we all know that now is the time. We're just a couple of months out from the most important election. We have to come together. I don't think that's going to be an issue at all. one of the biggest Joe Biden fans you can ever find. And I am so excited about this ticket and our ability to maybe stop Donald Trump for good, and look forward to this effort. It's time for us to come together and forget about all of that.
Let me ask you one question about Trump, that as much as you disagree with almost everything he believes in, could you find one redeeming quality in Donald Trump, either personally or policy-wise?
Well, I thought he worked really hard, or had his people work really hard to get the vaccines in place during COVID. He was not a good leader during COVID, and you're talking to a governor who had to help lead my state. We governors had to take over that time, but I think getting that vaccine in place certainly helped curb things at the end of the day.
Yeah. Governor, let's talk about your future. Would you serve in a Harris administration?
So I've loved public policy. I practiced law for 18 years in private practice, served in the legislature some, served as Attorney General. This job as governor has been an extraordinary opportunity, and it's hard to believe that there won't be something for me to do in public service. I just don't know what that is yet. I think after I finish my term and assess the situation, see where I might be needed, then I'll make the decision at that time. I think everything is on the table.
Everything.
Everything.
So what's that universe include? Running for Senate, running for president?
No, I'm not going to run for president.
You're not going to run for president?
Not going to do that.
No way. If Harris loses and is an open Democratic primary in 4 years, you're not running?
I think we have a lot of great candidates out there. That's what I think. And I think what's going to happen in 4 years is that Kamala Harris is going to be running for re-election.
If she's not, though. You said all options are on the table.
She's going to be running for re-election. We're very confident about that.
Have you talked to Kamala Harris or anyone from her organization about potentially serving in a Harris administration?
No. Only about policy. We've worked together on canceling medical debt, which has been some extraordinary policy that we've
Something
begun
you passed
in North Carolina
recently?
Yeah, we've gotten it done in North Carolina. A lot of other states are following it. I know this has been a big issue to the vice president. We talked about that. And we talked about winning this race, and that's it.
You nailed the zero with that line.
Yeah, that was quick.
Governor, thank you very, very much.
Yeah,
really
thanks
appreciate
a lot,
it.
Ryan. Appreciate it.